Chapter 3. The Pentagram of Cones. People ask me what we did on our first date, and I tell them the truth. We protected a chevron. Chevron had 11 cones. You think a pentagram takes 5 because you're thinking of the drawing of a pentagram, which is 5 lines, but a drawing doesn't have to hold up under aerial pressure. A working pentagram is 5 lines plus reinforcement at the intersections plus one floating cone that moves, which Tammy called the goalie. 11 is honestly the minimum. 11 is a shoestring pentagram. We made it work because that's who we are. Tammy did the surveying. She doesn't use tools for this. She stands very still with her arms out and rotates until something in her jaw clicks, and that's north. Not magnetic north, not true north, actual north, which she says the other 2 norths were invented to hide. I asked her once how she knows when her jaw is right, and she looked at me with enormous patience and said, "Because it stops being wrong." And I have never asked a question about the jaw since, because some instruments you don't open up. You just trust the reading. My job was placement and hauling. I want it noted that I moved every cone myself, and that parking lot cones at that hour weigh more than they do in the day. This is a real thing. Ask anyone who works nights. Objects rest heavy after dark. Science hasn't gotten to it yet because science sleeps in. We worked mostly without talking. That was the part I couldn't get over. I'd carry a cone toward a spot, and before I got there I'd feel a little pull to the left, and I'd drift left, and I'd set it down, and Tammy, 40 feet away, facing the other direction, jaw mid-click, would say, "Good." 6 hours of that. I have spent whole years of my life around people where every minute took explaining. Explaining why I was somewhere, explaining what I was doing, explaining what I meant by the thing I said, explaining the explanation. And here was a person where the explaining was already done. It got done before we met, somehow in advance, both of us doing our halves of it alone in the dark for decades, and now we could just work. I set down cone 8, and I had to stand there a second and hold my own elbows, because I realized this was the best night of my life and it wasn't even over. And there's a specific feeling when you notice you're happy while you're happy instead of 6 years later, and it's almost too much. Like looking at the sun. Tammy saw me holding my elbows and didn't ask what was wrong. She just said, "I know," and clicked her jaw back to north. Then the truck came. About 4:40 in the morning, this 18-wheeler pulls off the highway and comes grinding up toward the diesel island, which, I want to be fair to the trucker here, is normally a reasonable thing for a truck to do. Under ordinary circumstances, that's what the diesel island is for, but these were not ordinary circumstances, and the diesel island happened to be sitting directly on our western intersection, which is the load-bearing intersection, and the truck stopped with its front bumper about 4 feet from cone 11. The goalie. The truck honked. One long honk. Now, Tammy had briefed me on the shadowbirds while we surveyed, and I'm not going to lay out the whole taxonomy here, but the relevant fact is this. Shadowbirds don't do their own daylight reconnaissance. They can't. They're shadowbirds. Dawn was coming, so anything that showed up before dawn, making a lot of noise, trying to get us to break the western intersection, would by definition be working with them. That's not paranoia, that's just reading the schedule. The truck honked again. 2 shorts. Tammy looked at me across the lot and held up 2 fingers, which meant, "Did you hear that pattern?" And I had heard the pattern. The trucker leaned out his window. Big guy, sleeveless, a face like a boiled ham with opinions. He yelled, "Move the cones." And I yelled back, very calm, very de-escalating, "W8 sent you." I'll give the man this. He committed to his cover. He did the whole performance. "Yeah, I just need diesel. Yeah, I've been driving since Scranton. The what is wrong with you people?" And it was good. It was really good. If I hadn't known what I knew, I'd have believed he was exactly what he appeared to be, which is of course the entire point of an advanced scout. The better the trucker, the worse the sign. Tammy walked over to my side of the lot, taking her time, letting him watch her come, and she stood next to me and studied the truck for a while, the grill, the mud flaps, the little orange lights along the top, and then she said to me, quietly, "Look at the running lights." I looked at the running lights. "Count them," she said. I counted them. I'm not going to tell you the number, because you'd want to go count running lights yourself, and then you'd know what we know, and your life is set up nice. Here's what Tammy did, and this is the moment I point to if a scientist ever asked me when specifically I fell in love, like pinned down, no takebacks, the moment. She walked up to the truck, right up to it, inside the honk radius, and she moved the goalie cone 4 feet to the left, and she waved him through. The trucker stared at her. "You're letting him in?" I said. "He was never trying to get in," Tammy said. "He was testing whether we'd hold the line under social pressure. We held it. Test's over. Now he reports back that the perimeter's real, and they take us seriously, and things stay professional." She waved the guy through again, courteous, like a crossing guard. You always want them to take you seriously. Amateurs get harassed. Professionals get negotiated with. The truck rolled through the gap, and as it passed, the trucker looked down at us from the cab, and he shook his head slowly, and he said, "I heard it clearly, over the engine. You two deserve each other." He meant it as the worst thing he could think of. It's the nicest thing anyone has ever said at us. Tammy reached over and took my hand for the first time, right there in the diesel fumes, and squeezed it in a pattern. Rapid, slow, rapid, rapid, hold. We put the goalie back and reinforced the western intersection with the broom laid flat across it, which Tammy said converts a 5-point perimeter into a 5-point perimeter with a broom across the west, and if that sounds like it isn't a technical upgrade, then I don't know how to explain brooms to you. Around 6, Devin came out. He stood in the doorway with his little red vest and his lanyard, and he looked at the parking lot for a long time. 11 cones in a reinforced pentagram, a broom across the west, 2 people holding hands in the middle of it, and dawn coming up gray and pink behind the car wash. He had his phone in his hand the whole time. He never once raised it. I found out later, Devin told me this himself, months after, through the glass at visitation, because Devin is the only one who comes. But that's ahead of the story, that he stood inside half the night with 911 pre-dialed, thumb over the button, watching us, and every time he almost pressed it, he'd think, "But they're not hurting anybody." And then he'd think, "Yet." And then he'd watch a while longer. That morning in the doorway, though, all he said was, "Y'all are gonna find out one day." And I got chills, honest chills, because that is a blessing. That's what that is. Think about what finding out means. It means all of this. The perimeter, the shadow birds, the Norths they don't teach. All of it confirmed, out loud in public, undeniable. Most people live and die and never find out anything. Devin looked at me and Tammy on our first date and prophesied that we, of all people, would find out. "When?" I asked him. Reasonable question. Devin closed his eyes for 8 full seconds. Longest I'd ever seen. Whole paragraphs coming in. "I'm gonna go restock the squeegees," he said, and went inside. And then the sun came up, and I need you to understand that it came up inside the pentagram first. The light hit our lot before it hit the road, before it hit the Waffle House across the street, before it hit anything. Tammy says that's just East being East. But she was smiling when she said it, the couple of teeth smile, the full commitment smile, and she didn't let go of my hand, and the shadow birds did not come that night or ever, not once, not to this day, and you're welcome. 6 hours, 11 cones, 1 broom, 0 incidents. You never forget your first perimeter.